Good afternoon, everyone. I'm a funding manager at the Big Lottery Fund for the Growing Community Assets Programme, or GCA, as we like to call it. Some of you may be aware of GCA already, but for those of you who are not, it's a programme which aims to give communities more control and influence over their own future through ownership of assets. These are usually physical assets, so land, buildings, equipment, but can be other types of assets as well, such as energy. So I'll give you a bit of background to the programme and the application process, and a bit of a flavour of the types of things we've funded already. GCA has been running for 7 years now, so there's also quite a lot of learning about the programme that we've developed over that time. So I've also tried to pull out some of those key learning points to share those with you today as well, if you're thinking about progressing with an application. It's worth pointing out at this point that we've recently completed a 5-year independent evaluation of the programme, and it is available on the website. It's a hefty piece of research, and I don't expect you all to rush home and read it from cover to cover, but I'm flagging it up because there's some really useful information there. They did a very in-depth study speaking to a whole range of GCA-funded projects, and there's useful executive summaries and also what they call a checklist of success factors. So some of the information I'm talking about this afternoon has been pulled from that, so it is worth a look. So a bit of background to the programme. GCA is one of 3 investment areas, we call our programmes investment areas, within a portfolio called Investing in Communities. It originally launched in 2007, and then we did a sort of refresh of all our funding priorities in 2010, and kept GCA, but just refreshed some of that, and launched again then. It's Scotland-wide, and you can apply for capital and revenue funding. Under GCA, it tends to be quite heavy on the capital just because of the nature of the investment area. And we fund in both rural and urban areas. It's Scotland-wide, as I say. For all of BIG's funding programmes, our starting point is to identify outcomes and what we want to achieve, and that's what we have done for GCA. So there's 4 outcomes that we want applicants to address, and you need to be able to show that you can address all 4 of these. These were refreshed as part of that reprioritisation, as I mentioned, in 2010, and I think the key points to flag up here are that there's a greater emphasis on evidence of need, and also to show that the project that you're applying for really does address the key needs in your local community. And also, you'll see that one of the outcomes is around sustainability and financial viability, and that was really recognising the point that has no doubt already been made today, that we want to see communities taking on assets and not liabilities. So I'll come back to talk about a couple of those points later on, but just to let you have a look at them at this stage. So a bit more about the nuts and bolts of the programme, if you like. Who can apply? Well, as the name suggests, GCA is about community-led and community-driven projects. So we do have some specific eligibility criteria for this programme, which doesn't apply to some of our other funding programmes. And the aim of that is really just to ensure, to protect that community-led and community-driven aspect. So you'll see a couple of the key eligibility criteria up there at the moment. What I would say is we look at that early on in our assessment stage. We've got a 2-stage assessment process. So we look at that early on, and we'll look at your governing documents and can give you a bit of advice on that. So I don't really want to go into the detail of that here, but it was just to flag that up. So how do you apply? Well, as I mentioned, it's a 2-stage application process. At stage 1, you fill in a brief form. It is brief, I promise, where you tell us a bit about your organisation, a bit about the project, what you want to do, and importantly, what stage you're at with it in terms of planning, and how much money you're looking for. If you get a yes decision at that point, we will then send you the full application form, which is longer. But we normally expect you to be able to return that full application form within a 12-month period to us. During that 12-month development phase, you have the opportunity to apply for development funding, and this is where you can use that money to apply for some of the costs that were mentioned in one of the questions earlier. What we're trying to do in this development phase is help you get to the point of being able to complete a stage 2 application that is at the quality threshold that we need before it goes to committee. This has been quite a deliberate move to control the number of applications getting through to stage 2. It doesn't mean that everything that gets through stage 1 will automatically be funded at stage 2, but your chances are much higher. We took on board feedback that we had from applicants who didn't want to be filling in a very lengthy application form and then for it not to be successful. And also that's not efficient from our point of view as funders if everyone's doing a lot of work on applications that don't go anywhere. So that was really the reason behind trying to tighten up the stage 1 decision process. So if you get through stage 1, your chances of being funded are higher, but currently I think it's up over 70%, up at around 75% the last time we looked at it. The flip side to that is we reject quite a lot at stage 1, but what I would say there is we always try to be clear about why we're rejecting people, and it might be just that we don't feel that you're quite ready to apply yet and you've got a bit more work to do, and we may signpost you to other funding programmes that you can use to fund some of that work before you come back in. Equally, we do try to be clear if we just think this isn't a GCA project, so that we're not sort of wasting people's time working up a full application. So that's why we're really emphasising the last point here about encouraging people to talk to us before even you submit the stage 1 application form. It's just really helpful if you can phone up the inquiries line, have a quick chat with one of the advisors there about what it is you want to do, and then you're not even having to go through the process of submitting stage 1 until you've got the reassurance that, yeah, this looks like a potential project. Stage 2 decisions are usually within 4 months. We can do that quicker in some circumstances, or if we can, we will do it quicker. But 4 months is our published turnaround time. And that might seem like quite a long time, but factored into that are things like our committee timescales, the amount of work in the assessment process. We may be asking you for more information, so we'll give you a bit of time to go off and do that and bring it back to us. And by their nature, GCA projects tend to be large and sometimes complex bids that go through a number of reviews. So it's just to allow all of that work to take place. There's no set deadline, so you just submit stage 2 when you're ready to do that, and that's something that we would try and agree with you through that development phase. So what can you apply for? Well, importantly, the money. You can apply for up to £1 million. In fact, you can apply for more, where you do have the flexibility to fund over the £1 million, but it's something that we would expect to discuss and agree with you in advance if you're putting in an application of that size. You can apply for capital and revenue, as I said, and we can provide funding for up to 5 years. There's a lot of support through this process. We have a capital team based in Glasgow, 2 capital advisors, and they can help groups navigate their way through some very technical information that's sometimes required with these applications. So you will get a lot of support with that. We do recognise that most applicants to us for GCA are applying for funding for a large capital project and will have no or very limited experience of running that kind of project previously. I've mentioned their development support and funding, and I just again wanted to emphasise that a little bit more today, because I think this is really important. So in that development phase, as I say, you've got the option to apply for funding. Our kind of ballpark figure for that is up to 50,000, but you can apply for grants above that. The decision-making process is slightly different, but sometimes for capital projects it does go above the 50,000. So that's all part of that GCA application process. However, BIG, as you will probably know, has a whole range of funding programmes. So some of those other funding programmes you can access as well to help you do some of that development work. And 2 key ones that I would want to bring to your attention are Awards for All, and particularly Investing in Ideas. Both provide funding of up to £10,000. and quite often we use them if we think there's potential with an application but they're at a very early stage and are kind of thinking, oh, what do we need to do here and what do we need to do first and who do we need to speak to. Investing in ideas can help with things like an options appraisal or some community consultation work. It's whatever you think you need to focus on. You also, as well as money, you will get support from staff. So there will be funding officers attached to your application through that development phase and beyond, who will have a look at draft materials for you and give you feedback on that so that you can get some reassurance on whether it's looking like it's meeting our requirements. I've mentioned the capital and technical advice already. And another one that's important to mention for GCA is we have a number of support contracts that we've put in place with organisations providing specialist support. And a key one for this, for GCA, is a contract we have with the social investment business. They can provide a lot of support with business planning and things like that. So through that development phase, we can refer applicants to SIB, and they'll come out and meet with you and help you work up your business plan. That support's available post-grant if you get a grant awarded as well, but it's important to know that it's available through that development phase as well. So as I say, we're really trying to support you to get to the stage where you can put in a good quality stage 2 application. So that's a bit about the nuts and bolts of the programme. What kind of thing do we fund? I know you've had some examples this morning from Argyll and Bute. I've got a couple of other here, just some photographs for you to have a wee look at from different parts of the country. This is the Gale Centre in Gairloch in Wester Ross. It's a new build, as you can see, and it's a multi-purpose community building, and what they did there was bring in some existing services in the community. So there was a tourist information and gift shop already in Gairloch, but in quite cramped premises. So they brought them into the new centre, have also got some exhibition space and offices for rent as well. Another community hub, but in quite a different setting. This is the wonderfully named Gaukhrapple Community Hub in North Lanarkshire, near Wishaw. So again, it's a multi-purpose community hub. That is quite a popular model that we see. We fund quite a lot of community buildings. And again, they provide a range of services, so things like housing and benefits advice, as well as a shop and cafe and other services as well. Something a little bit different, this is in the East End of Glasgow, Milbank Community Nursery. The group there had identified affordable childcare as being a real key issue for the community. So we have a nursery there who provides some discounted nursery places. So again, it's really about deciding what are key needs for your community and looking at what asset would best deliver those. And lastly, and just because it's got some people in the photograph, all my photographs are of buildings, but I love this project as well. This is the refurbishment of the Applecross petrol station. It was a small grant by GCA standards, I think around 20,000, but such a key lifeline service for that community, because otherwise it's a sort of 40-mile plus round trip to get petrol for them. So that's a bit of a flavour of projects. I mentioned that the evaluation has been looking at what are success factors, and I've tried to summarise some of those here. What would a successful community asset look like? And I'll talk about these in a little bit more detail, but as you can see from the examples there, there's no typical GCA project. But some of them, successful projects, have a number of similar features, if you like. They address need, they're genuinely valued and rooted in the community, and they create and provide opportunities for people to develop, and importantly, they are sustainable. So just to pick up on a couple of those in a bit more detail, that it needs to address need in your community. Now this seems obvious, but it is important, I think, to look at when you're taking on an asset that you have a good understanding of the needs in your community and how and why this particular asset will address that. Sometimes what will happen is an asset will become available and that sort of galvanises people in the community into action, and that can be a positive thing, but I think you need to be careful that you can still evidence that it is going to address the needs in your community, so you need to have done that community consultation or community research. Community support Again, this comes back to the point that GCA is a community-led and driven project. We look at this at our assessment stage, but we also try and encourage projects to refresh this throughout the lifetime of the project as well. This is hard work, it's not easy work, it needs dedicated time and resource to make it happen. Consultation, engagement, information giving, they're all slightly different, but essentially we're talking about communication and how you keep your community on board. So issues there that you need to think about are how you keep it fresh, how you keep people informed when maybe it might look like from the outside not much is happening, and look at the different ways of doing that, so whether it's websites, newsletters, community events. Delivery, I've said here be realistic in your planning. I think the main point I would flag up here is timescales. It will probably take a bit longer than you anticipate and perhaps hope. Know your limitations and seek help, and that's really just about using all that advice that I've set out that is available to you. Make good use of that. I think another point to note here is that different skills are needed at different points in the project. So if it's a building, for example, the initial development and build phase, the skills needed for that are quite different to then when you move into an operation, doors opening phase. So we quite often see a change in staffing and board at that point. And lastly, talking to and visiting other projects. Our committee are very keen for people to do that, and you can use things like awards for all or investing in ideas to fund those kind of trips as well, and they're very, very useful. So I'm sorry that was a bit of a quick skip through a lot of information. I would direct you to our inquiries line as a first point of call for that initial discussion, just to talk through your project ideas if you're thinking of applying, and they can route you to the various teams that you may need to talk to. And there's also obviously information available on our website if you just put in /GCA, it will bring up all the GCA relevant information. There's some postcards and handouts through in the table in the marketplace as well. So that's me for now. Thank you very much.